Hey guys, it's a snow day, but I thought I'd spend a little bit of time in the seminary building answering some basket questions. Unfortunately, I don't feel like we have, or I don't take a lot of time in class to do these all the time. And I really regret it because it's maybe the most valuable thing we could do in class is to answer your questions. But I'm going to take a shot at it here. I love it when we're all together and you have a chance to chime in with your experiences and your opinions. I think it's helpful. So sorry that we don't have all of you here to help each other answer your questions, but I'm going to take a shot at it here. Here's one that's been in here for a while, I think. Why is it that in Alma chapter 11, verse 5, it talked so much about the currency? So Alma 11:5 gives a long list, and it seems like it's completely out of place to have this list of all this currency right in the middle of this very kind of intense, dramatic story about this guy named Zeezrom, who's an attorney, and he's very kind of money-oriented, and he's an anti-Christian, and he's trying to bribe the prophet and and others to deny basically their faith. And then we got this whole list of this currency right here. And it starts by saying, like, now this is the reckoning is thus: a senine of gold, a sion of gold, a shum of gold, and a limnah of gold, a senim of silver, an amnor of silver, an ezrom of silver, and an ontai of silver. So it's interesting that ezrom is in there as a Hebrew name for one of their measurements of silver, and the guy's name is Zeezrom. And Z in Hebrew, I learned, means of, or that of, or he of. So his name literally means the guy of silver, or he of silver, or him of money. So maybe he was known to be very, very worldly or materialistically oriented. So the person who wrote this says, my guess is because they said the names of their currency in the future, like later in the Book of Mormon, perhaps, and Zeezrom was doing it all for the money. I think perhaps it's helpful here to, I did a little bit of research on this at Book of Mormon Central, which is a great database where a bunch of questions are answered and lots of evidences, scientific and archaeological and anthropological evidences of the Book of Mormon are kind of discussed and debated there. So you might find that helpful if you don't know about that website. It's I think it can be helpful. And a couple of ideas mentioned there are that that the author wanted us to see the size of the bribe that Zeezrom was offering, which was essentially 42 days worth of wages, which is a fair bit of money, right? Another reason why perhaps is so that those who like to rely on and understand evidences of the reality of the civilizations spoken of in the Book of Mormon, they like to prove them in ways. And there have been authors who have taken this record of these this monetary system and shown how it fits very well with the like ancient kind of monetary systems found in Mesopotamia, where the Book of Mormon originators kind of came from. So I think that can be helpful. I don't know if that is that important to know, right? But it's interesting. And I do believe, like, why would they go to the trouble of recording anything, especially getting it into the final copy of the Book of Mormon, if it wasn't useful to us somehow? And I believe that everything in there, because it was written for our day, will eventually become useful to us in one way or another. I don't think there's any wasted space, no wasted effort in the creation of and the interpretation, the translation of, and the publishing of the Book of Mormon for our day. Okay, there's that one. Next. Could you break down that whole Old Testament poster on the back? This is like going way back, right? So that's not very good for me to be getting a question about the Old Testament poster, but I think I have one here on my computer, so maybe it will be helpful for me to, let's see, pull that up and share it with you guys. If I can find it, give me 1 second. There we are. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to share a screen. Maybe. Okay, we'll see if this is helpful to whoever asked this question. So we start, so this poster was on the back wall. These are printable pages, so we're going to go kind of scrolling vertically, although it was listed out horizontally. So I hope that you can see my screen and you're not just looking at me talking about this. So we start in the Garden of Eden, obviously, with Adam and Eve. And the next main story is the city of Enoch, who was like grandchildren of Adam and Eve, and his city was taken up to God because of their righteousness. The next main story we have is, what's this one here? Noah, and the ark, and the animals, and the dove bringing back the fig leaf. Then here we see a little corner of a rock, so that's obviously the Tower of Babel, where they were trying to get to heaven their own way without doing it God's way. Then we have the three patriarchs known as Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Jacob had 12 sons. Well, it's not exactly that simple, but these guys we call the 12 tribes of Israel, and Jacob's other name was Israel. And so they were taken, they went to Egypt, which is these two symbols here, and then they spent a bunch of time there, and those 12 tribes of Israel became in bondage. And then we have Moses, baby Moses here, floating down the river and brought into Pharaoh's house. And let's see, we have the crossing, we have the escape of, or the exodus of the Israelites from Egypt, from the bondage and tyranny of Egypt. And to do that, they crossed the Red Sea. And then we have Moses here at the base of Mount Sinai, received what? The 10 Commandments. Then over here, these squiggly lines, they went wandering around in the desert for 40 years until finally Moses died and Joshua was made the prophet, and Joshua was allowed to take the Israelites across the Jordan River into the land of promise. And what they had to do there is conquer, capture, or have basically given to them through God's power the city of Jericho, where the walls of Jericho came tumbling down miraculously. Then we have a period of judges in the Old Testament. And then we have these three important kings. Each of one of them united Israel, the 12 tribes, into one kingdom. The first one, the S, is who? Saul. Then D, David. And then the other S is who? Solomon. And Solomon built this temple. And then after Solomon's death, the kingdom split into the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom, the kingdom of Judah and the rest of the tribes, essentially. And although R doesn't mean the rest of them, I think it's Jeroboam and Rehoboam are the name of the two kings that split up. And then up here, we have the 10 tribes. They went to the north and were taken captive into Assyria. And the southern tribes were taken captive into Babylon. And let's see. Then once they're captive, we have the amazing story of SM&A, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And they were in the fiery furnace because of their faithfulness, and the angel delivered them. Then, of course, we have Daniel, who was a contemporary of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. in the lion's den. And then we have the return of some of the tribes to rebuild their temple. And these Z, E, and N are three prophets, I think three different kings that were important in Israelite history in the rebuilding and return of the kingdoms to the land of promise. And then there was a gap of 400 years between the last prophet and the birth of Jesus Christ. So that's what that poster is all about. There's obviously tons of stuff missing from the Old Testament in that simple timeline, but it's kind of like the main gist of it, perhaps. Is that helpful? I hope so. Kind of interesting. We didn't cover lots of those stories, though. I imagine somehow that we'll be able to bring some of those main stories into our study of the New Testament at certain points. This question, how do you mean? I don't know. How do you mean? Okay, here's another question. Oh, I'm still sharing, sorry. I don't think I'm that old, but I act old when it comes around computers sometimes. Okay, how can I best teach a Christian of a different religion about our religion? Okay, so they're already Christians. You want to teach them about Latter-day Saint Christian religion. What do you think? Some of you have had this opportunity, right? The experience to share your belief in and membership in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints with your friends who are already Christians. How do you do that? How do you build on common ground? How do you find common beliefs, of which most of them will be very same or very similar to your friend? And some of them will be a little bit different, or maybe a little bit more detailed, or a little bit updated from just what we find in, New Testament Christianity. So I would say my answer is live it well and live it openly. That might be a great way to share your religion with a friend of the Christian faith. Your life and the light in your countenance is the best sermon that you could give. I think showing first of all, that the gospel of Jesus Christ, as it has been restored, provides solutions to problems in your life. It provides answers to questions. It provides direction. It provides a foundation for how to live your best life and to fulfill your greatest potential. That's what's found in the restored gospel. So if you're living it and you're showing it, then that will be attractive to those who know you. And they will naturally want to at least wonder or question what it is that you have that helps you to deal with the problems that you encounter, how you live a life that's free of substance abuse and lots of heartache and trouble that even other Christians don't necessarily have freedom from, depending on how they choose to live their life. But their Christian religion might not demand it of them the way the Latter-day Saint religion does encourage and have us covenant to obey. Another way to share your religion with those who are already Christians is to ask them questions. I love sharing by asking questions. You get to know what they think. You get to know what they feel. You get to know what they don't know, or where the gaps are, maybe the questions that they have, they would like to have answered. So I would love to see young people engaging their friends by asking more questions, bringing up religion more, having not debates, but discussions, because you can talk about so many things, but everybody's afraid to talk about religion, right? So it would be great if we could become more comfortable at bringing up our religious activity and our spiritual pursuit in everyday conversation with our friends. I think people are looking for it. I think they recognize something from those who are truly living their covenants from the inside out, There's something different about those people. And of course, you can always, I don't have it here, but we've got Books of Mormon that you can hand out, but don't just give it to them. Mark it up, write something in it, show some powerful favorite passages of yours with them. And of course, maybe the last thing is invite them to come and see, and do what Jesus did when he was calling his disciples. Invite them to come, see what it's all about. Come and experience it for yourself. Don't just take your word for it. Come and try it out and see how you feel. And I'm sure you guys have some great ideas too. Let's do a couple of more here. Okay. A friend of mine died last year, and I'm not sealed to him, obviously. We're not sealed. What is the doctrinal standpoint on this? Will I see him again, even though we aren't sealed? So, sorry that your friend passed away, and I don't know how you feel about that, if that was hard for you, or something that because of your understanding of the restored gospel, there's comfort there in the graduation from mortal life to the spirit world. It's really just a transition. It's not losing somebody. It's just goodbye for a little while. And here's how I can say that with confidence. In Doctrine and Covenants 130, there's a phrase there. So my dad passed away when I was in my early 20s from cancer, and I had actually had death in my life of quite a bit, I would say, even starting when I was a young kid. So death is something that's always been kind of up close in my life and personal, and something I've come to understand from a very early age, had to wrestle with and get my own kind of framework around what happens when we die. And I've done a tremendous amount of research on what is available to know about life after mortality. But one verse that I really love that is very comforting to me is in D&C 130, verses 1 and 2. Well, mostly 2, but I'll start with 1. When the Savior shall appear, we shall see him as he is. We shall see that he is a man like ourselves. So there we go. There was somebody who lived on the earth, somebody who was resurrected. They continue to live somewhere. And we have the opportunity to continue to interact with them. That's what we learned from verse 1. Verse 2, and that same sociality which exists among us here will exist among us there. Only it will be coupled with eternal glory, which glory we do not now enjoy. So I like that idea of sociality, the way we interact with people, the way we have friendships, the way we have family relationships. Although family, we have to get a little bit specific about what that means. But the way we associate with one another here, we can expect will be similar there. We don't suddenly become something completely different from what we are here, or a different kind of person, different personality, different interests, different challenges, different strengths. We are the same person, and we continue to exist as ourselves in a different form without, well, even a spirit is actually physical in a way. It's just a kind of refined matter as described in the Book of Mormon or in the Doctrine and Covenants. Spirit is refined matter. It's just more refined than we can see with our eyes in mortality. Just like maybe you could say there's so much light on the spectrum of light that we are not able to perceive. With the eyes, the tools that we have now, we can't see all that light, but we know that it exists because we can build other tools that can detect that light and tell us about it. Same with sound, right? We can hear a very small range with our mortal ear of sound, and it's mostly geared towards the sound of other people's voices, right? A very limited range, tuned to the sound of other human beings and the sounds that those make. But there's a bunch of other sound range that we can't perceive. Dogs can perceive higher pitch, for example, and so much other. So it's the same with our spirits. We continue to exist. We continue to actually be physical in a way, but just in a different way. And the same way we interact with one another here, generally we can expect something similar there. But when it comes to sealing, all right, do you have to be sealed to? Will the only people you will get to see and interact with in the world of spirits be those who you were sealed to in this life? No. What we understand about sealing, and I think maybe the limitations this person is getting at, we can go to D&C 132 for a little bit here. And Joseph Smith taught very well about the difference between laws here and laws there. Verse 7, 132 verse 7. Well, we'll start in verse 5 and then we'll go to 7. For all who will have a blessing at my hands, this is Jesus Christ speaking, shall abide the law which was appointed for that blessing, and the conditions thereof as were instituted from before the foundation of the world. In other words, there's just cause and effect, essentially. You want this result, this must be done to get this result. This law must be followed to get this blessing. It's a law that is so ingrained in us, we know it intimately without even having to think about it, right? Cause and effect. And you can't expect to get a certain result or effect if you don't do the things leading up to it to bring it to pass. Verse 7, and verily I say unto you that the conditions of this law are these: all covenants, contracts, bonds, obligations, oaths, vows, performances, connections, associations, or expectations, even expectations that are not made and entered into and sealed by the Holy Spirit of promise of him who is anointed, both as well for time and for all eternity, as that too most holy by revelation and commandment, skip down a little bit, are of no efficacy, virtue, or force in and after the resurrection from the dead. For all contracts that are not made unto this end have an end when men are dead. Did that make sense? To simplify it, essentially it says whatever rules men, women, society, human society on earth create or make, they mean nothing on the other side. God doesn't have to honor, in that realm, God doesn't have to honor those things. Rules of men, courts of men, judgments of human beings, governments, authority, all of that stuff, it doesn't carry over to the next life. Different sets of rules there than what we've created on our own here. So if you want it to continue to exist, well, we just have to be ready to play by the rules of the place where we live. God is trying to show us how to live here so that we can live successfully there. He's trying to prepare us to be able to do and be free and to act and to learn and to grow and to do and to build. He wants us to be able to live well there. And so that's why he gives us hints and rules and guidelines for what to do here to prepare us to go there. That's what commandments are. That's what God's expectations are. So I don't think that you would expect that just because you're not sealed doesn't mean that you won't see them anymore. You're not going to go live in a little vacuum by yourself if you weren't sealed to somebody, right? It just means that the sealing is all about so marriage is like a mortal contract, essentially. It's a legal status. And that law's authority comes from human beings and the governments that they have created. But that doesn't mean anything to God if it isn't done with his law, in his way. And there's a certain way that God wants marriage to be done. And so for it to have permanence in the next life, it needs to be done with God's authority, which does transfer over. But man's authority does not transfer over. Maybe one way to think about it also would be something like if two little kids are playing house, right? And they're playing house and they've got their little house set up and their little rules and their little things that they do. And then as part of that, one kid has given another one, say, authority. So like, you can stay up tonight as late as you want, and you can eat as many cookies as you want. And so when they're done playing house, it's time to come and join back with the adults in the real world, right? And the kid's like, no, I can stay up all night. And I can have as many cookies as I want. And the mother's like, oh, is that so? Okay. Why? Why do you think you get to do that? Well, because my 6-year-old sister said I could when we were playing house. And so, how would that go, right? Would the parent honor the rules set up in that little playhouse after playhouse is done? They don't apply anymore, right? And that's going to be heartbreaking for the little 4-year-old to know that he can't stay up as late as he wants and eat as many cookies as he wants, because there was no authority given. There's no real authority outside of that play area that would apply, even though the 6-year-old said it would. I don't know, maybe that's a terrible example, maybe that's helpful, but really we got to understand that there are laws and they are immutable, they are not movable, and that everything has cause and effect. And God is trying to get us to understand how to operate in the next life while we're here. So we're prepared. So we'll have the advantage. We'll be able to do what we need to do and want to do there. And the less we learn how to do that, the more stuck and unable we will be to progress and move forward. So many examples. Let's say you get a kid who refuses to do anything with numbers or letters. They refuse to learn their alphabet. They refuse to learn their numbers. They refuse to say the sounds. They refuse to read. Okay, well, that's that kid's choice, let's say. But will that give them advantage or disadvantage later in life? The kid doesn't care about reading. The kid doesn't care about whatever advantages they might get. For them, it's just dumb memorization. And I don't care about this. It's not fun, so I don't want to do it. The kid doesn't understand that later in life, having those skills, having been disciplined enough to learn them, having gone to the trouble to figure out their ABCs and their 1, 2, 3s and how to write and read, that will cease to become the mechanics of saying sounds and will become language. And that language has power, and that gives them access to all sorts of freedoms and abilities that they wouldn't have if they didn't learn those mechanics at first. And the saying of your ABCs and 1, 2, 3s actually has nothing to do with really how you will use those little skills later on. Adults don't sit here and think about ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. They just operate with knowledge and power, but that didn't come without first doing these building blocks. So what God is trying to do is give us these building blocks here. And if we can manage to learn them and do them, then it will mean so much to us when we get to the other side and understand how that world works. And we've only seen shadows of it here a little bit, trying our best to make our way using God's template, his recipe, his rule book, his textbook, trying our best to learn it so that when we get there, boom, there will be freedom to act. Maybe I went on a little tangent there. I don't know. That's probably way more than this person was asking about. You will see your friend again, should you both choose to, right? You still have agency. You don't have to be sealed to see your friends. But if you are not able to do the same things, then there might be some barriers that keep you from being able to interact with each other. But I wouldn't worry about that too much. And do we do one more? Maybe we should save this one for class. How do you feel the Spirit? This would be a good one to do in class. Yeah, and there are a few more in here too that I think maybe I'll read them, but we won't answer them. Does Jesus need me? Is depression of the devil? I have bad self-discipline. Just a statement. What is the best way to control my tongue? I'm having a hard time. I'm having trouble saying kind things and being respectful at home. I love the humility there. Wanting to get it right, but it's still difficult. Here's another one. How do I stop a bad habit that I don't want to stop, but I should? It's harder than just simply stopping. People think it's just that easy. No, it's not, especially if you don't want to. We'll cover these in class, okay? And we'll save that how do you feel the Spirit one for class too. I'll find a way to get it done. All right, I hope this is helpful. I'm going to send you guys a link here. I don't know if you'll watch it today on the rest of your snow day, or I don't know if you'll get to it some other time or if you never watch it. But anyway, some basket questions answered. Love you guys. I love associating with you. I love the sociality that we enjoy together. And look forward to seeing you tomorrow.